So one of the main things that I was thinking of that's I've been thinking of a lot when I was doing this show was the concept of artificiality. Since I paint from my imagination, I come up with an idea and through a sketch, and I develop the sketch and I bring in layers of other ideas until over the years I end up with a composition that I paint. So since I use my imagination, at some point I need to rely on some references oftentimes, because you just don't know what all the sort of realistic details are going to look like given the perspective you've chosen for the painting, the lighting, etc. So I've used over the years pictures of myself for figures as a reference and images I find. More recently on the web, but before that it was in books and stuff. But the thing is like rarely, if you find those pieces of information after you've already developed, where the pose is going to be and the lighting, it's rare that you find information from a reference that's going to be very helpful, because the picture was never taken with that as a consideration. I've been getting into more like using cars as one of the elements in my paintings, and sometimes you use a toy car and then you control the lighting and the perspective that it's going to be. So maybe I sketched the idea of this guy and a car in a sketch, but then when it came time to actually figure out how it was going to work, I got a real toy in there. And in the past I would just kind of make, if I used something like that, the toy to get the lighting, I would then look at other references and try to make it look realistic to scale if the car was back in the distance and how it would look. But I'm increasingly interested in this neat tension there that happens when I paint something like that, like the toy car, actually realistically like the toy car look. But I like that tension because it reminds me of, I think a lot of the energy and a lot of the impulse that comes through is very childlike when I'm thinking of what to paint and I'm looking at stuff and I'm inspired. It reminds me of playing as a child. Like here, this I've definitely painted it like the toy that it is. I mean, from a distance you might think it's just, well, it's a motorcycle guy back there, but it's kind of strange. It has white tires. I mean, the toy had white tires, and so I just painted it kind of frees you up from thinking of a motorcycle. Well, it's got to have dark tires, and in order to look realistic, it's got to behave in certain ways. It's I like the freedom of it's actually being realistic because the toy looked like that, but I can paint the tires white, and maybe that serves a better function. It plays off of the light color here, whereas if it had dark, there wouldn't be that, it needed a light color, like a white there. This concept of artificiality is just inherent in it, because if you start using a lot of different references, and some references are already prefab stylized, and so they've already been distilled down. So I have a natural way that I tend to stylize, but then I like sort of how the references sometimes already have distilled the image.